Hi, this is Mako Fujimura, and I'm an artist in Princeton, New Jersey, here in my studio. I want to thank Pastor Dale Lim and others to have invited me to speak to you this day. And I'm going to speak right from my studio because my latest book is called Art+Faith, a Theology of Making, that came out of Yale Press early this year. And the book itself speaks about the gospel, but from the particular vantage point of being a maker. And as an artist, I am my work is in my studio. I come here every morning to start my day by meditating on one of the Psalms that I'm working on and painting these images like the one that you see behind me called Walking on Water. It's a series of paintings that I started after the 3/11 tsunami and earthquake and ongoing nuclear disaster in Japan. And really intuiting what is happening, what art can do is to enlarge the question, ask impossible questions like, can we walk on water? And enlarge that question, not really to answer them, but really to create a conversation, point of reflection, meditation, and also creating something that is beautiful in the midst of strife, darkness, challenges. And during the pandemic, I was sequestered here, and for an artist, that is normative. I am always in my studio to paint, to think, to write, and I'm grateful to journey with my bride Haejin, who is international attorney advocating for especially the people who under oppression around the world. And so we talk about beauty and justice here in the studio as well. Today, I want to highlight one passage in the Bible, in the New Testament, 2 Corinthians 5:17, where Paul says, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone, the new is here. As an artist, thinking about God, the ultimate artist, and the Bible, as I note in my book, is literally a book about creation and new creation. You start with Genesis, obviously, God, the creator who stood outside of time and space. And God did not have a need to create, as some of us may have. God simply created out of pure love. So this idea of all sufficiency of God is very important to note, because many times in how we view God, we tend to think as humans what God can be. Rather, in the biblical narrative, this God stands outside of time and space, and therefore God is perfect communion, perfect community, perfect in every way. And therefore doesn't need the creation like we do, doesn't need us. Surprising to a lot of Christians who wants to admirably fix the world. We believe sometimes that we are needed by God for a certain reality, and particularly when we see brokenness. And there's nothing wrong with trying to fix the world or to come up with a vaccination for the pandemic, or trying to really recover the holistic healing, the place of abundance and life that God has given us. And yet we can fall into the trap of thinking that we are needed for God's mission, for instance, to prove God's existence. We spend a lot of time defending, we call it apologetics, but defending one's faith in front of non-believers. And while I'm not against such debate, I don't think that's really how God doesn't need our defense. God is simply, and God is love. So that's good news, that God's creation is gratuitous, extravagant. It is beyond abundant, abundant beyond abundance. And that means that God sees the universe as art. And not only that, God is perfect. So this art is perfect. And in the order of creation, the culmination of that is Adam and Eve. It is humanity. And even though we have fallen far short of God's glory in Eden, and in our lives, we face brokenness and our own propensity to think that we are at the heart of the universe, or to think that we can determine or change who God is, and worship idols that we have created, and so forth. Despite that, right, Jesus comes. Jesus comes as incarnate Son of God, fully God and fully human. And Jesus's journey toward the cross, the suffering that Jesus had to suffer because of our transgressions, he took that on to his body. He suffered on the cross and died. And yet, because he was God, he powerfully resurrected into new life on the Easter morning. And Holy Spirit comes to help us, these fallen creatures, to be perfect in God's perspective. Through the Spirit, God sees us as masterpieces of God's creation. And so this value and promise that's built into the creation, despite the fall, is fulfilled in us, God's creatures, who Jesus came, paid a price for each one of us to enter into God's kingdom. It's John 3, Jesus says to Nicodemus, you must be born again, because we need to have that gift be received in our hearts, and we need to open our hearts to this enormous reality. And Paul says, finally, in 2 Corinthians, that we are a new creation. The word new in Greek is kainos. There are several different Greek words for what is new. One is neos, N-E-O-S. The other is kainos. To highlight the difference between the two, from neos, we get the word neon. And kainos is a rather unusual word that is not used that much, even in the context of that time that Paul was writing. And yet Paul uses this very unique word, kainos, rather than neos. Let me explain the difference between neos and kainos. Neos is neon, so it's flashy, it calls attention to us, but it's temporary. So it's like a new iPhone or a new car or a new fashion design. There is value for but a moment. Next year, there's new neos. And so this doesn't last. But what Paul is talking about is not something that is built on the old, something that is improved from a previous model to a new design. Paul is talking about something cataclysmically different. So I transliterate this term kainos as newness rather than just something that is new. we tend to interpret when we hear in Christ we're a new creation, we tend to think, oh, we are the improved version of who we are now. And we try to improve ourselves over and over. C.S. Lewis writes, and I quote him in my book, Christians are not horses that are training to jump higher and higher in this realm of moralism, to jump higher and higher to become better and better. No, Christians are creatures with wings, or horses with wings. I love that. We have been given wings to fly, and the way that we need to begin our journey as newness in Christ is to exercise our wings. What happens when you are trying to fly? Well, most likely we fail multiple times before we can actually take flight. It takes time before our wings gain strength, which means you have to use them to learn how to fly. But initially, you're going to look very awkward trying to fly. But the point is that there is a way that our wings can strengthen, and we can become horses with wings flying into the vista of the new world. Now, when we think about this analogy, and I speak to artists all the time about this, artists are one of the first to jump into the air and fall on their faces many times to do the impossible. And yet they're the ones who are crazy enough, perhaps, to keep going. Many of us stop at the first try to fly. We see something beautiful and we aspire to be something beautiful. But somewhere along the way, somebody says, oh, that's going to be hard. That's going to be impossible. You should do something more, perhaps more pragmatic that you know how to succeed in. But artists are kind of like, oh, it's impossible. That's good because I want to do that. And they keep doing that despite many years of failures, perhaps many years of looking very awkward and strange. And so after 30 years, I'm asking the question, can we walk on water? And I'm trying to access that. And these paintings will be exhibited in Chelsea, New York, in Highline area this September, because September 11th will be commemorating the 20th year of that ground zero experience. I was 3 blocks away from the towers. My children became ground zero children. And for 10 years after, we try to live in ground zero to help recover that area. The trauma still ensues in my life, and there are fractures from that day. And yet I can tell you that as an artist, my primary task in being an artist of ground zero, facing this disaster, facing the wasteland in front of me, standing on the top of ashes, my task was to look into that space, that vacant space called ground zero, and to create into that space. So when 3/11 struck, I was immediately connecting 9/11 and 3/11, and how these, one being natural disaster, the other being man-made, but they're both colliding in our world. And of course, the pandemic highlighted both, right? So many ways that we did not respond to the pandemic initially has caused the variants to happen, and we did not do well, I don't think, as nations working together to solve this problem. And yet we did come up with an extraordinary modern medicine has produced this vaccination, from which we are grateful, and we can resume our lives in somewhat normative ways. But the question remains, what is the newness in light of the darkness that we are experiencing, the challenges that we have faced? And for that, I want to tell you that the number one, the most important thing about this journey is to remember that in Christ, we are a new creation already, right now. As you have journeyed in the Spirit by faith to receive Christ's gift from the cross into your lives, to die with him, to be raised again, that means you are already entering into the new creation. Newness is not just a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. It is like a butterfly becoming an entirely new species in a new world. And what Paul is saying is that fundamentally in Christ, we are not just new, we are new, which means we don't understand what this newness is about. It is beyond our comprehension. And it's like a butterfly in a new universe where everything is reconciled. It's flying about beautifully, fulfilling butterflies, calling foodie. And that butterfly actually transmigrates into our world and resides in our hearts, giving us wings to become that new creation. And in fact, we are already that. So when we make, God shows up, and that newness shows up in us, whatever we are making. And you don't have to be a professional artist. You don't have to be a musician. You don't have to be a poet. You don't have to be a theater director. When we love the world, when we love each other, when we love our loved ones, of course, but also our neighbors and our enemies, when we exercise mercy into the world, when we create beauty into the world in any way, whether it be gardening, cooking, or plumbing, all these acts of done in faith is already building something in the new creation. Now that is astonishing. And if you're listening to this and if you're saying, no, that's too good to be true, that sounds like a fairy tale, then you're getting my message. Because the gospel is the grand narrative, the narrative of all narratives, the new narrative that we haven't heard before. So this day, as you're listening to this, you might want to just pause, pray, and ask God to reveal that newness that is already in you. What does that look like? And what kind of steps, faith steps, do you have to take today? Little things to exercise your wings so that you can learn to fly as a new creation. Now, the fact is, we're going to fail again. We're going to look awkward. We're going to look to the world like we don't know what we're doing, because we don't. But that doesn't matter. If you have a community, if you can become a community of horses with wings who are learning to fly together and learning to care for each other while you're trying, you're going to fail often. And yet, if you can create a community that says that's good that you failed, your brokenness is welcome here, because it is going to produce, these fragments can come together in this community to create something beautiful that exhibits this new creation into the world, despite facing ground zero conditions all about us, this realm of scarcity, people fighting over resources. People think it's a zero-sum game where you have to win at all costs. And you say, no, because we are new creation, we're liberated from our bondage to decay, we're liberated from a scarcity model. We live in abundance of Jesus. We live in abundance that is remains of Eden, but we also live in this super abundance of the new creation now. So join me as we make, join me as we create beauty. Join me as me and Haejin as we attempt to rescue children from the oppression of human trafficking. And Haejin, the lawyer, says, my work for advocacy, my work to rescue these children is not complete when they are rescued by IJM, International Justice Mission attorneys, working hard all over the world to create laws and to have the police enact them so that they can be rescued. It's just a beginning. That's just the beginning. We have to educate them and protect them from the darkness that the caste system that prevents children from learning to fly. And then it is until that child sees himself or herself as beautiful, as this new creation, butterfly, horses with wings, that the work of advocacy is complete. So join us in doing that in whatever the way you can, and continue to tap into the mystery of the creation, the power of new creation in the art that you bring into the world. God bless you.